A side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello there, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing well, Brooke. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just in case you were wondering, this is another episode of A Side B Side podcast. And so, Adam, just before we even kick things off, I have to tell you that you are 100% right. And you know how much that hurts my heart when I have to tell you that you were right about something.
Yeah, no, it does not happen in my life very often that anyone will admit that I am right. So I'm going to enjoy this.
So so I've been watching the newest season of You and Made, but they're both, You is not heavy, but it kind of is if you know what You's about as a stalker.
Yeah, which is pretty heavy stuff.
It is kind of heavy, and then Made is very heavy. It's got Margaret Qualley, which is Andy McDowell's daughter. Andy McDowell's actually in it as well. And it's a really heavy show about like a single mom and all the struggles she has to go through. And I'm like, I get it. I've been there. I've lived the single mom life. It's a good show, don't get me wrong, but it is really heavy at the same time too.
Yeah.
So the other day I was like, I just want something really fun and light. And I remember that you had talked about Ted Lasso, and then like it won like all the awards, and everybody's like,
we talked about it like last December, January. Like we were ahead of the game trying to get people on it.
Right. And then of course, after we talked about it, that's when everybody started talking about it. And then, like Jason Sudeikis is getting like all the accolades, and everybody talks about how great it is and what they've already got a third season planned. Mm-hmm. They're going to start filming that, like, I think at the end of next month or something like that. So I was like, okay, but I went into it and I was like, I'm going to go into this. I'm going to watch one episode so I can tell Adam and go, it wasn't even that good.
I'm gonna watch this. Like, I'm gonna hate watch this to
right.
prove
I'm
that
totally
it's
gonna hate watch this to prove it's not even all that. So I could just be like, Adam, I watched it and whatever. And
yeah.
Oh my gosh, can I tell you, it is great. It is so stinking good. I was like so mad at the first episode because I was like, why is it this good? Stop it.
No, I was working last night and you're texting me like that you were watching it, and it was great because we were like not really that busy. So like I would sneak into the back doing the whole server bartender thing where you go hide in the cooler for a little bit, or you're gonna go check something downstairs. You just like check your phone when you get down there, and it was fun. I kept doing that to see Brooke's response because it would be like you could tell where she was in the series by what question she was asking, and I'm like, how do I say things without saying things and ask questions without. But it was really funny because it was this whole like text string of watching you like go through it, and I could tell. I noticed when you were like, "Oh man, I'm gonna end up watching all of these, aren't I?"
Yes, I was.
Did you watch? Did you watch the whole season last night? The whole first season?
but pretty close. I even watched a little bit today at work.
Yeah,
I did. I watched.
It gets you hooked.
It really does, because like. And I don't think this is a spoiler because it's like the whole point of the show, because you mentioned this before. Like, he's just such a genuinely good guy that you can't help but like the character. Like
and like everybody, like Jason Sudeikis, but even just like most of the characters in the show have redeeming quality.
Yes. I mean, there's there's one character that I texted you about, and I was like, I already love this dude. He's supposed to be the cranky, grumpy, mean dude, but I love him because he's still a good dude.
Yeah, and gets even better. I'm just saying.
So I'm really excited to get to the point, because I told you, I talked to Rick Astley a couple of weeks ago, and apparently Rick Astley is a big fan of Ted Lasso, and they used his song in one of the episodes. So I'm very excited to get to that point to see this episode, because one of the main characters apparently sings the song, and I'm just excited.
That's all the way in season 2.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think I'm on. I know I'm almost done with season 1, because there are some yeah, I know I'm almost done with season 1. I'm trying to like tell you where I'm at without like giving it away because I don't
Right.
want to spoil anything for anybody because it is still such
It's
a relatively newish show.
yeah, and it's not, it's not like a true crime thing where you're gonna like spoil the ending, but it's serial. So like every episode builds on the other one, and there are overarching
Yeah.
stories that like when you're watching it, you're gonna want to know, and if you know ahead of time, it kind of it's gonna ruin some of the enjoyment.
Yeah. So I have one more episode to go to finish the first season.
Okay.
So I will
There's so many, like, again,
surpass you.
yeah, because I have been holding off on watching the second season. I've got some plans for the winter where I'm going to be, it's darn cold out here.
Right.
So I'm trying to get all my outside time in and walks and stuff and enjoy that, because I know in, late November, December, January, February, it's going to be like air hurts my face weather. So I'm going to need to be able to binge some stuff. So I've been holding off on that. I actually caved and watched a movie that I'd had on my list to hold this week. So I'm already starting to break.
Is that your A side?
No, it's just one I finally watched that I've been holding on to because it was new this year and I was excited to see it, but I wanted to wait until colder weather. But I just caved and watched it this week.
What was it?
The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt.
Oh yeah, was it good?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was different than I expected in some ways. It's they really make it out to be like a war movie in the trailers,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a war movie, but it's more like an action movie. Jurassic Park almost feels to it.
Okay.
So the stuff you see in the trailers, it's only about half the movie. There's a lot more to it, and they do a good job of kind of, there's two separate acts of it really, and it brought me in, and I even teared up at one point. So I would definitely say it's worth a watch.
Okay. It's amazing how they can take a trailer and make it look like a totally different movie.
Yeah, I mean, because there are plenty of battle scenes, but there's also so much more to it. Like, it felt like all they showed in the trailers was like, the battle stuff, and that's a part of it, but there's also a lot more going on. So I was a little surprised at how much more there was to it, because it just seems like, it's just gonna be guys with guns running around, and there's plenty of that, but it's more to it as well.
Okay. I also started the fifth and final season, or as they call it, season 5. It's season 5, but it's their final season of Insecure. So when they were doing like the promos for the upcoming season, they would call it season 5. You get it, like by 5, but and it's a great show, and I'm really kind of sad that it's ending. Apparently Issa Rae, who is the writer, creator, director, that was her plan all along, to do 5 seasons. So
well, and things always seem to work better when they have a definitive arc and an end.
yeah.
I mean, like The Matrix is a great first movie, and then it was so successful they made 2 other movies that make no sense, and now they're making a 4th movie that really doesn't make any sense, but okay. Instead of just leaving well enough alone. The first season of Lost is epic, and then they just got weird and confusing and lost the plot. Dexter by the last season. How many shows had the last season where you're just like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Dexter, the Dexter, what, New Blood or whatever?
Yeah, it's coming back.
Yeah, like later this month.
I mean, what was it? CSI Las Vegas, like the original CSI show, is now back.
Yeah.
Which I was like, who was clamoring for that?
Right.
At one point, those like the lead actors were making like $1 million an episode, and it was like the #1 show on TV. And then they stopped doing it, and no one has seen any of those actors since.
Isn't that amazing how that works?
Yeah, like it's pretty rare to transition from TV to movies and become a big hit. Like, so I would say, the TV actors that realize that they're TV actors or they're just going to like bounce from series to series, they've got it right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty rare to jump to the movies.
Like Kenan Thompson on SNL, he said, I'm not leaving. Because, all those SNL people, they get big on SNL and then they're like, I'm going to make a big career for myself in the movies. And then they don't. I think Kristen Wiig has done pretty well for herself. Kate McKinnon had a good start. She's really funny, but it's not really working for her. So
yeah,
Kenan
she's got a lot of commercials.
Yeah. But Kenan is like, look, it's a paid gig and it's steady. I'm not leaving. I respect that.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you just love what you do. I mean, like, not everybody. It goes all the way back to like Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd and trying to think of Steve Belushi, and then SNL's had a lot of guys that left
Jim Belushi
and became Jim Belushi. Steve Belushi? Who the hell is Steve Belushi?
Steve Martin, you mean?
Steve Martin. Yeah, I was trying to think. Honestly, like I'm just mashing things together over here. But I don't even know if Steve Martin was ever a cast member. I know he's hosted.
No, he's just hosted a bunch of times.
But it like there are guys and gals that have left and become big stars, but it's not as common. Like, Mike Myers had his day, Dana Carvey and Adam Sandler, and like Jimmy Fallon went and did the TV show. But
right.
Like, I don't think Tommy Davidson has clearly been trying.
Pete Davidson.
Tommy Davidson is from the 90s, and he was on
In Living Color. He was on In Living Color.
Well, welcome to the A-side, B-side show where Adam just mashes people's name together.
So we've got, what is it? Steve Belushi and Tommy Davidson.
And Tommy Davidson. That's great. Oh, man. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens when I get to the A-side. If we have, it's just pretend this is the multiverse and this is the world where everybody's name is slightly different.
All right.
It's funny. I've been playing D&D with the same group of people for 6 years.
I was going to say for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert, I'm a nerd and a geek. But it has become canon that Adam cannot remember, and my characters especially. My first character never could remember a name. But it's mostly because I am horrible with names. I have a memory for faces, but I am really, really bad with names. And especially in games where like, oh, we went to this city, I'm like, I have no idea where we were. so it's art imitating life, imitating art or something at this point. I'm not good with names, and it's getting real bad.
Oh man. All right, so are you ready for this week?
I am, and I get to go first, right?
You are correct. You do get to go first this week.
I've just gone to like always assuming I'm going first, so I'm completely ready. And then when it doesn't happen, it's like, okay, I'm still ready. So I figure that's better than me being like half, like got all my notes scattered about and being like, okay, I'll just add things while Brooke is talking. So I'm just always ready to go.
You are correct. You go first.
Okay. So as we talked a little bit earlier, I've been watching a lot of stuff at home because it's starting to get colder again. And as I have been, so I love YouTube, and I'm on YouTube all the time watching trailers and things. And so I was searching for the new trailer, and I don't know if you've seen this, Brooke, for Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, which looks
weird.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really fun. But I mean, it's based off an anime, so it's going to be a little bit out there. And so I'm searching for, I wanted to rewatch the Cowboy Bebop trailer, and I knew that there was a breakdown from Nerdist where they go through the trailer, they point out all the things that you might have missed, which I love those. So I'm typing in Cowboy Bebop, and YouTube pops up, the suggestion, and all of a sudden it was a movie that I have not watched in probably 4 or 5 years, which I used to have on DVD, and somehow in the move or the reorganization of my life in the last few years, I don't have on DVD anymore. So I can't watch it whenever I want. And I was like, oh, this is no good. It popped up, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to find out where I can watch that movie because I haven't seen it in so long. So the movie was Cowboys and Aliens, which is a horrible title for a pretty decent movie. But the movie itself never seems to escape the horribleness of that title. And the irony is that it's a great title for a comic book or the graphic novel that it was based on. So Cowboys and Aliens came out in 2011. So we are in the 10th anniversary. It has a blockbuster director. It has big names in the cast. It has a very deep cast. So you've got star power as well as depth. And it's got two of cinema's most diehard fan bases mashed together. So it has all these ingredients. And I remember the day that I saw the preview. It was during the Super Bowl. It was the first preview to come out. And I had kind of heard about it, but really hadn't heard much. I watched the preview and I was super excited. And I couldn't wait for it to get into theaters. And then somehow it ended up being a fairly unsuccessful commercial flop. Roger Ebert. Gosh, I knew I was going to do it. First name I mentioned, I mess up. Roger Ebert actually had the following fairly scathing, throw in shade review. And we'll put the link to his full review on our website. But this is my favorite part of it. He says, Cowboys and Aliens, and I don't know how to do a Roger Ebert voice, so I'm just going to end up doing a vaguely British voice, which is what I always do when I'm quoting something. So, Cowboys and Aliens has, without a doubt, the most cockamamie plot I've ever witnessed in many a moon. Here is a movie set in 1873 with cowboys, aliens, Apaches, horses, spaceships, a murdering stagecoach robber, a preacher, bug-eyed monsters, a bartender named Doc, a tyrannical rancher who lives outside a town named Absolution, his worthless son, two sexy women, one not from around here, bandits, a magic bracelet, an ancient Indian cure for amnesia, a symbolic hummingbird, a brave kid with a spyglass, and a plucky dog who follows the good guys for miles and miles through the barren wasteland and must be plumb tuckered out.
Okay, but what is it? The unattractive woman, the barkeep named Doc?
So two sexy women, one from not around here.
Yes.
A barkeep named Doc, and a tyrannical rancher who lives outside of town named Absolution.
And his son?
And his worthless son.
Son.
The movie is all over the place, and it is pure escapism, which, we'll get to is one of the things that I love about it. But it was directed by Jon Favreau, and this is coming right off of his success with Iron Man and Iron Man 2. You've got Daniel Craig, Harrison Ford, Sam Rockwell, Olivia Wilde, Keith Carradine, Clancy Brown, the Kerrigan himself from Highlander, Paul Dano in a small role, who's going to be the Riddler in the upcoming The Batman movie. It even has a small role for the incredibly excellent Walton Goggins, and completely unbeknownst to me until I was doing my research this week, a very young Wyatt Russell, Mr. John Walker from the recent Disney Plus Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, is in the movie as well. So you've got a ton of really talented people involved. It's based off a 2006 graphic novel by Scott Mitchell Rosenberg, and it revolves around an amnesiac? That's not a word. A outlaw who can't remember nothing, Daniel Craig, a wealthy cattleman, Harrison Ford, and a mysterious traveler, Olivia Wilde, who must work together to save a group of people abducted by aliens. I mean, I saw the trailer and I'm like, okay, Jon Favreau, I loved Iron Man, Han Solo and James Bond in the same film. This is going to be awesome.
Right.
I completely geeked out. However, the critics did not geek out as much. Rotten Tomatoes gives it an approval rating of only 44%. Has an average rating of 5.6 out of 10. Their consensus review is, Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford are as dependably appealing as ever, but they're let down by director Jon Favreau's inability to smooth Cowboys and Aliens' jarring tonal shifts. And the one thing that keeps popping up is that for critics, having the themes of the Western and the themes of sci-fi interact and collide was just too much. And it feels like they missed the whole plot, because that's the whole point. You're taking these two cool things and you're mashing them together, and you're getting something completely new that isn't going to be 100% one thing or 100% the other. It's going to be some sort of combination or amalgamation of all that stuff. Metacritic, another critics website, only rated the film 50 out of 100, which it classifies as mixed or average reviews. But, and this is the one that I tend to listen to more, and that is CinemaScore, which actually polls like real people audiences, because critics historically do not love movies that make money. It's a very strange thing. Like they tend to love like art pieces that make like $10 million and only appeared in 3 theaters, but were like the best movie of the year. Whereas like the big blockbuster hits that everybody goes to, they're like, oh, well, that's not any good. I was like, okay, well, it was still fun. And sometimes movies are just supposed to be fun. Audiences polled by the CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B. And hey, if C's get degrees, B's are pretty darn good.
Yep.
So I would say that is a much better indication of the enjoyment of the film. I personally enjoyed the film when I saw it as a trailer, and when I got to the theater, and when I bought it on DVD, and then last week when it randomly popped up on YouTube and drove me to watch it yet again, and is become my pattern. I've watched it 3 times in the last week because I try to kind of dive all the way in from an obsession standpoint to get as much as I can to prepare for this as part of my prep. But also, I just really like movies, so it's nice to have stuff on just constantly running. Mm-hmm. So, as part of the A side today, we're going to look at some of the reasons why it may have underperformed, and also what I like about the film and what keeps me coming back for repeating viewings on its 10-year anniversary. So one of the first things that always impacts a film and keeps popping up as we talk about films that have struggled or didn't take off the way they were expected is that it takes a long time for the idea of Cowboys and Aliens to become an actual film. The movie was released in 2011, but film studios first started talking about it in 1997. So the writer, Scott Mitchell Rosenberg, who was working on developing the graphic novel, so he hasn't even finished the graphic novel yet, starts talking to DreamWorks and Universal about it becoming a movie. He didn't even finish the graphic novel until 2016, so nearly 10 years after DreamWorks and Universal are already thinking about making it into a movie. And I think when you talk about Cowboys and Aliens, if you were pitching this movie right after Men in Black is a huge hit, I think that would be an entirely different conversation than pitching it after Snakes on a Plane. Because the Men in Black it's a weird title. It could be a comedy, could be an action movie. Snakes on a Plane, obviously, we know it's going to be spoofy comedy. And Cowboys and Aliens, for some reason, when you hear it, you think, is this going to be just a comedy movie and not an action movie? And the movie itself has moments of levity, but it's much more a very true to the Western feel and sci-fi and action. And it is certainly not a spoofy comedy where we're going to, goof on the idea of Cowboys and Aliens. By the time the graphic novel comes out in 2006, DreamWorks and Universal have moved on to something else. A couple other studios took a look at it, so we've got even more people involved in the process. Finally, in 2007, it comes back to DreamWorks and Universal to develop it. And so by the time we get to picking a director and starting on a cast, we've had 4 or 5 different studios involved, and there have been a lot of writers. And this is the story for the entire buildup of this movie. By the time it gets made, so going through script writing and casting and then filming and rewrites and reshoots and all that, we have almost 10 different writers that are officially credited by the Writers Guild of America on the IMDb webpage. So for screenwriters alone, you've got Roberto Orci, Alex Kurtzman, Damon Lindelof, Mark Fergus, and Hawk Otsby, which I don't know if that's his real name, because that is an awesome name.
I was going to say.
Sounds like it's made up. Hawk Otsby. Hawk Otsby and Mark Fergus are also credited as screen story writers, as is Steve O'Derrick. Steve Odekirk. And then you've got the original writer, Scott Mitchell Rosenberg, which was involved as well. So you've got the script that keeps changing, it keeps bouncing from studio to studio. And even to the point of the characters involved, the characters are completely changing within the script. So when Jon Favreau took over directing the movie, he was under the impression that he was going to be working again with Robert Downey Jr., who he had just worked with on Iron Man and Iron Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character was going to be a former war veteran lawman. Robert Downey Jr. decides to go make the sequel to Sherlock Holmes, The Game of Shadows, which pretty good choice, fun movie. And they recast the main character as Daniel Craig, but then changed the character's background completely. Instead of being a former war vet, lawman, it is an amnesiac. I'm just making that a word. Amnesiac is a word. It is amnesiac.
Amnesiac.
An amnesiac. A outlaw that don't remember nothing. Instead of a lawman, so they completely changed the character. And then once Daniel Craig is on board, they send the script to Harrison Ford, and the first time he reads it, he gets 20 pages in and according to legend, throws the script across the room and says, "I don't understand it. I don't get what's happening in this script," and doesn't want anything to do with it. They finally rewrite some things and get him back on board. So Harrison Ford, when he first read it, was like, "I don't get it. I don't want to do it." Then Sam Rockwell, who after working with Jon Favreau in Iron Man 2, it finds out that he's interested in the film. So they completely rewrite a character so it fits Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell's character, Doc, who is the bartender, not a doctor, he's a bartender, is originally, in the original script, is a burly Mexican man. Sam Rockwell is neither burly nor Mexican. So you had to do some rewrites there to flesh out the script a little bit for the actor that they cast. What I do think is interesting, and what is really just never mentioned in the script, is they clearly didn't change the character of Doc's wife at all, and it's just never addressed that they are a mixed race couple in the Old West, and I feel like that they could have done a little bit more with that. It's just really not a plot point that much. Because I think they were just like, "Oh, Sam Rockwell wants to do it. Let's change this character completely to match him." So by the time you get to the actual film, it's gone through probably dozens, if not hundreds of rewrites. It's very different from the source material in a lot of ways. It's come a very long way from what had originally been proposed way back in 1997. And often when you've got that many cooks in the kitchen and that many writers involved, you're going to have a somewhat disjointed film. Yeah. And honestly, by the time it gets done, it doesn't feel that disjointed. For that many people being involved, it's smoothed out pretty well. It is a linear story. You get actually a lot of character development. And one of the things that the film did get reviewed well was the performances, so especially of Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig. One reviewer said Harrison Ford looks like he's having fun for the first time in years. Daniel Craig is really good at doing these sort of, tough and stoic, but so he's playing this guy doesn't remember anything, but he's very believable in all of his background, that he could be this vicious outlaw, and it works really well. And that's probably one of the things, that is one of the things that I really enjoy about the film. And there are lots of things that I like, but let's talk about the top three. Okay. And number one is that character development. Jon Favreau, for all of the complaints by critics that he jarred between Western and sci-fi themes, but that was the whole point, we're mashing them together. Each of the characters, and even each of the main characters, even some of the minor characters, get a lot of background and story and a chance to grow. And as an audience, we get, we make these assumptions about certain characters, and then they're twisted or flipped, or we learn more, and it shades how we think of them as the film goes on. And that is something that happens often, or sometimes in Western movies more so, I think, than sci-fi. And it really works. I mean, Daniel Craig's character, Jake Lonigan, you get an idea of where he's coming as he's kind of going through the whole process of remembering, you're doing that along with him and learning about the character and how he's this changed man. But he wasn't one thing. He wasn't just an outlaw, and he'd left the gang before he got kidnapped and turned, and brainwashed by the aliens. And Harrison Ford isn't just this, racist cattle baron who's got a worthless son who ends up getting in trouble. He's also a former war veteran who adopted, and there's going to be some spoilers in this, so I should have mentioned that. But at this point on the A side, if you're coming to a podcast that's going to talk about media and movies, you don't expect spoilers, then you're doing it wrong. Harrison Ford's character, Don Elgin, who is a former war veteran who was in the Spanish-American War and ends up adopting an orphaned, Mexican boy and raising him as his own, as well as this other worthless son. And how Doc is this guy who decided to come out west to start a business and is, clearly not the Wild West frontiersman. He's, a city boy type of guy, and he's trying to grow. And even the preacher, who's criminally underused, Clancy Brown, who, whenever he pops up in a film, I'm like, oh, I really like that. He's a great character actor, and his role as the Kurgan in Highlander is all-time good bad guys. Still gives me the willies sometimes. They're all given opportunities to grow and to become more than just the stock characters. Pretty much the only one that doesn't pull it off is Olivia Wilde, who it's not really her fault when you're in this is one of her first big roles, and it kind of feels like she's overshadowed by a lot of the other actors who just seem a little bit more comfortable in the roles. Also, as the sort of mysterious visitor, she plays everything kind of wide-eyed and like expressionless, because she's an alien trying to figure spoiler alert, she's an alien trying to figure things out and help them out, and it just, there doesn't seem to be a lot of humanity in her portrayal, which I mean makes sense because she's playing an alien, but it's just really cold, and it feels like it's the only performance that sticks out as not nearly as good, as probably because in comparison to the others. The film has the classic Western feel, with the group on a journey, to go rescue their loved ones and going across the lane, learning things about themselves and each other. And there's a lot more to each other, and a lot more character development, and a lot more story than you would normally get from your regular summer blockbuster. One of the second things that I love is that this movie came out in 2011, so it is just a couple years after Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I was super excited for Indiana Jones 4, and then it sure appeared that Harrison Ford was not, because he does not look like he's having a good time in Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's a movie that is meh at best, and in this one, he actually looks like he's engaged, and he's 100% there, and he's not just going through the motions. And as a Harrison Ford fan who has seen almost everything he's ever done, I love that there seems to be that little bit of a glint in his performance again, a glint in the eye that he hadn't had in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I love that. And I think it moved right into later when he was in, going back into the Star Wars universe, how that Han Solo was so much more Han Solo than the Indiana Jones that he played in Kingdom of the Skull was Indiana Jones before. I'm cautiously optimistic about the forthcoming fifth Indiana Jones, that he's sort of hit this renaissance in his later where he's enjoying acting again, but we'll see. And for a sci-fi movie, the film spends a lot more time on the visuals and vistas of the West, and it looks like a Western movie, and it doesn't spend a ton of time sort of showing off the aliens. The aliens are there, they're scary, they look different, they're bug-eyed, but I mean, come on, aliens look different. At one point, somebody said that they were the creation or the look of them was influenced by Jon Favreau's trip to the Amazon and seeing some frogs or something. They're going to look like aliens, but they don't spend a ton of time showing off the aliens. The studio pushed for the movie to be in 3D. Favreau said no. He shot it in a format that is much more traditional for Western, so it looks like a Western. It is not a 3D movie. It doesn't spend the whole time like showing off the special effects. They do the one thing that it seems every Alien movie since the original Alien has to do, and they have the moment where the alien has some sort of thing that opens up and like other arms pop out. Super gross. I don't know why alien movies have to do that, but it's something that happens in this one as well. But even that is a small moment and doesn't seem to be showing off the special effects as much. A lot of the times the aliens are bathed in shadow. They're hard to see. It is not a very clear, like, here comes the alien, let's show it off sort of thing. And even their motives are pretty vague, and they don't spend a lot of time like talking about it, because they're kidnapping people to experiment on them as aliens do, but they're also here for gold. And the movie doesn't spend a lot of time, like going into that, because let's be honest, cowboys are going to shoot first and determine motive maybe never. So it felt very much part of the film where they're like, hey, these guys stole our loved ones. We're going to go get them back. We're going to shoot them. We're probably going to blow up their home. And then we'll figure out maybe later where they're from or why they're doing this. But first things first, we're going to shoot them and blow them up. And I'm like, dude, that's what cowboys do. They're not here to research. They're here to rescue.
Right.
So one of the things that audiences and critics complained about was that Cowboys and Aliens wasn't truly a Western, and it wasn't truly sci-fi. And it suffered from maybe trying to be too many things. And to me, that's exactly why it works. It is the enjoyment of taking two fun things, mashing them together, seeing how they exist. And it definitely, in this modern era where a show like Marvel's What If can exist, where people are open to the possibility of just kind of tweaking things and seeing how things would be different, this feels like a great what if moment. What if aliens invaded and cowboys were the only ones that were able to stop them, and we had to fight them off using the techniques and things of that time? It's very enjoyable. Performances are very good, and it is truly an escapable film. When you want to sit down there, you can have the suspension of disbelief. You can enjoy the visuals, get the story and the characters that evolve over time. You get some bad guys that are the aliens without having to really worry about the science, whether or not this is possible. And you just pop some popcorn and disappear for a couple hours, and you're better for it. So while Cowboys and Aliens may not have been the commercial hit that everyone had predicted, one worthy of a Super Bowl commercial, it did make its budget back and has gone on to be a pretty successful DVD and download release. It is available now on Amazon Prime. So if you've got an Amazon Prime subscription, you can log in and watch it right away. Or of course you can buy it on DVD, which I got this phase where I got rid of a bunch of DVDs.
You're going to start getting them again?
Now I've noticed that I'm buying stuff back because the way that stuff just moves around on all these different platforms, sometimes you're like, I just want to sit down and watch like The Hunt for Red October, but I'm not sure which, streaming service it's on. So I don't know, maybe I'll end up watching something else. It's nice to be able to just grab that DVD and toss it into the player and watch, you can watch what you want to watch. So I'm getting back into them. It's not very space effective, but there is a top list of movies that I will have always on DVD, and Cowboys and Aliens might be on that list.
I actually have to get a new DVD player. Mine broke right before I moved, so I have a ton of DVDs, but no player.
I have 2 extras. I could just mail you.
I'll pay you.
I mean, the funny thing is, it would probably cost more to mail than it is to buy one.
You think?
Oh, they're so cheap now. You get one for like $20.
Where? Because everyone that I've seen has been expensive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they are not cheap.
Well, I can easily mail you one because
you send me a link for a cheap one, please.
All right, I'll find one.
Okay.
But yeah, if not, I'll just send you one because I literally have 2 sitting within feet of me that have not been touched, because when you have an Xbox, a PS4, you don't need 2 other DVD players because I only have 3 TVs. So one of them is not going to be used, and they all play DVDs. All right, so So that is the A side. Go check out Cowboys and Aliens. It's better than you remember. And if you've never seen it, it's an enjoyable, escapist popcorn fun. Even if the critics didn't love it, you will enjoy it. Now on Amazon Prime. Also available Amazon Prime for sponsorships if you'd like to, since we're giving you so much.
Oh, all right. So
I mean, it never hurts to mention it. So.
It's true. I mean,
we are the #1 Angelina Jolie podcast.
Exactly. So Orville Redenbacher, if you would like to tag team with, what's the subscription service you just said?
Oh, Amazon Prime. Yeah.
That I was like, that doesn't sound right, but yes. So Orville Redenbacher, if you would like to tag team with Amazon Prime and provide popcorn for said movies that we would like to watch on Amazon, we would greatly appreciate that as well.
And I'm a big Act 2 butter lovers. That is my. It's been legitimately if there is an Adam food pyramid, it is one of the founding parts of that food pyramid. Because I eat microwave popcorn probably 6 times a week, and have since I was about 16 years old. So if I ever have like a Tybo thing, it's just gonna be like work out 17 hours a day and eat microwave popcorn.
So can I tell you real quick side note, but it kind of goes with what we're talking about. So I was having a conversation with my dad, and he was eating some popcorn, and he's got this plastic thing. He actually sent it to me. He got it off Amazon. And it's like $3 or something like that. It's like a little bowl, and you put the kernels in it, and then you put it in the microwave and pop it.
Oh, interesting.
It's really cool. And I was like, there's no way it's gonna come out good. And it does. It totally does. And then I know
a lot of people say that you got to do like the stovetop popcorn too.
Well, that's what it tastes like. It tastes like the stovetop popcorn, because that's what I really love. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm going to eat up some microwave popcorn, but that little contraption thing or whatever makes it taste like stovetop popcorn.
No. I've worked at a movie theater in my life, and the amount of popcorn that you have to pop for a movie theater, at least back in the 90s, it was like we had one person just popping popcorn and refilling the thing and putting it in bags and handing it to us to sell, because you were constantly selling popcorn.
Yeah. I'm sure it's still that way because people love the movie theater popcorn.
So I found you a DVD player for $20.
Oh, send me the link.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm good at the Google.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like update. I'm gonna go to the one that's Amazon Choice, and that one's 35. So
okay.
Just a little bit better.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more. All right. So is that the A side?
That's the A side, and also your Amazon recommendations for the day.
Oh man. All right. So spoiler alert, I think next week, it's not going to be this week. I think next week it'll be time for another Survivor story. We haven't had one in a while, so.
Oh, nice. Good.
But this week we talk about murderers. So this week we're talking about Farian Wardrip. And I actually found Farian completely randomly by accident. I was doing research for a completely different murderer. And then then you know how sometimes it'll give you like recommendations. Basically, it was like, well, if you like this story, you should read this story.
Yeah. If you're interested in this murderer, here's another murderer you might like.
That's basically how I found Farian, because I was like, I have never heard of this guy. So Farian Edward Wardrip was born March 6th of 1959 in Salem, Indiana, which is in Washington County. His parents, George and Diana, had 2 children. Farian was the oldest, and he had a younger brother. Not a whole lot is known about his childhood, but there's not any reports of like anything bad like we hear so often with these guys. There's no reports of like child abuse or physical abuse, sexual abuse, no mental illness, nothing. Farian did go to 12th grade, but he ended up dropping out before completing that year. So when he was 19 years old in 1979, he joined the U.S. National Guard. He went on to serve for 6 years before he was less than honorably discharged for
Which is
smoking.
not as bad as dishonorably discharged, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was less than honorably discharged, and then you have dishonorably. And then you've got like a general, and then you've got I can't think of it because I have it. Honorable, duh. That's what, and I have it. And I couldn't think of it, but I've got an honorable discharge.
That was a cool humble brag. I can't think of it. I got one. Oh, it's honorable.
Literally, I was trying to think of it and I'm like, how can I not think of what I was discharged with? But okay. But sorry. So it does sound like a humble brag. I apologize.
That was good. I was like, oh, wait, what's it? Oh, is this an honorable discharge?
What was that again? Oh, right.
Did I drop that? It's like when somebody's like, I hate when people brag about where they went to college. I have this friend who went to Harvard with me, and they talk about it all the time.
Oh man. Okay, so Farian was less than honorably discharged for smoking marijuana, disorderly conduct, and multiple AWOL incidents. Now, we've talked about going AWOL in a couple of other cases as well, and that's when you're when you kind
absent
of just
without
disappear.
official leave.
Yeah, absent without leave. So you just kind of vanish, you just disappear, you leave without being given permission. So while he served, there were several minor crises, like the Iran hostages in 1979. They were taken in 79, and they were released on January 20th of 1981. Then there was also the Iran-Iraq War, which went from 1980 to 88. Farian was never deployed into any combat situation. In March of 1983, 24-year-old Farian gets married to 20-year-old Jana D. Jackson. The pair together have 2 children. It was a very rocky marriage because, now remember, Farian got kicked out of the military because of smoking marijuana. Well, it escalated. And I'm not saying marijuana is a gateway drug. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he personally.
Right. Yeah.
And so he was addicted to drugs and alcohol. So that had a major impact on his marriage. In 1983, Farian got a job as a janitor at Wichita Falls General Hospital. And within 12 months, he was promoted from janitor to orderly. Now, that was something I learned brand new. I didn't know that was kind of like the order of things. I didn't even know they were related.
Yeah, I didn't. Maybe that was just that hospital.
Maybe, because I thought that they were on completely different, like.
Yeah, I thought like orderly had to have some training.
That's what I thought too.
Not that you don't have to have training to be janitor, just different.
Just a different kind of training.
You wouldn't think there'd be a lot of crossover.
Right. So on December 20th of 1984, 21-year-old Terry Lee Sims worked part-time as an EKG specialist at Bethonia Hospital in Wichita Falls, Texas. She attended Midwestern State University full-time. So Terry and her coworker, Lisa Boone, were finishing their shift at the hospital. It was around 11 o'clock, and the two decided to go to another friend's house because they were going to exchange Christmas presents. Terry and Lisa rode together in Lisa's car, and Terry was actually spending the night at Lisa's house so that Lisa could help her study for her final exam the next day on the 21st. Well, they get over to the friend's house and they're, having their little exchange and everything. And then Lisa actually ends up getting called back to the hospital. She gets a call from work asking her to return to the hospital for the midnight shift, which I need to look into this more. Like, how did they get in touch with her? Because there weren't cell phones in the 84, unless they just called and it's very possible they just called that friend's house, she may have mentioned, hey, we're heading over here.
Yeah. Here's a list of numbers where you can reach me.
Right. Especially if she was like on call or something, then that's probably what happened.
Because they wouldn't have beepers in 84, right?
No, not in 84, I don't
I
think.
don't think so. That feels too new.
Yeah, that feels way early for beepers. Like if you said late 80s, early 90s, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Lisa gets a call from work. So she goes ahead and she takes Terry and drops her off at her house. This is about 12:30. She gives Terry the key to her apartment and she's like, "Okay, I'll be back. I'm going to go to work." And then she heads on into the hospital. The next morning, about 7:30, she comes home and she like knocks at no, because remember, she doesn't have her key. So she knocks at the front door multiple times, but Terry doesn't answer. So then she goes and she gets her landlord, who gives her a spare key. And I don't know why, but when I first was researching this and I thought of like the landlord and like getting the key from the landlord, Three's Company came to mind. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
That's just kind of what I was thinking, like, "Oh, Mr. Furley, I locked myself out. Can you give me the key?" I don't know. And I'm not like making light of the situation. It's just that's what came to my head when I was researching.
It absolutely fits.
So she gets the key from the landlord and she goes inside and she immediately notices that her apartment like has been ransacked. Like the living room, it's just all disheveled. So she does the right thing. She immediately leaves and she goes back to the landlord for help. She did the exact right thing. Do not go into that apartment anymore. You don't go in there by yourself because whoever did this could still be there. So the landlord goes back up to the apartment with Lisa and they search for Terry. Unfortunately, they find a bloody Terry on the bathroom floor, on the very bloody bathroom floor. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed multiple times. So what happened was while Lisa was at work, Terry heard a disturbance outside and she went outside to see the cause. It was 25-year-old Farian causing a ruckus. So while Terry steps outside, she's kind of like just peeking her head. People do that like out the window. So she pops outside just to see what's going on.
What the heck is that?
He sees her and he immediately lunges for her. And she runs away and she makes it all the way back to the apartment. She locks the door behind her. She's thinking, "Okay, I made it. I'm safe." Well, Farian, who stands 6 feet 6 inches tall and he's 220 pounds, breaks through the door.
She's a big dude.
Big guy. Terry is only 5'3" and 94 pounds. There was no contest at all. Farian bound her hands with an electrical cord. Poor Terry, it is assumed, lived for several minutes after her attack. Police found and were able to preserve a semen sample that was found on the scene and a fingerprint on Terry's shoe. Both were saved for possible future matching analysis, which I'm so glad that they've thought ahead. Like, look, we don't have this right now, but hey, you don't know where we're going to be in the next few years.
Yeah.
So they were positively identified, but we'll get to that later. So Terry was buried at Crestview Memorial Park in Wichita Falls. So an employee of Wichita General Hospital, you remember who works there? Well, another employee, her name is Toni Jean Gibbs. She actually goes missing January 19th of 1985. Toni is 5'1" and 94 pounds. It seems that Farian came across Toni about 6 a.m. after he had been walking all night. He did know Toni because he was an orderly at the same hospital that she worked at as an RN. Well, Toni, knowing Farian and seeing him walking, offered him a ride.
Oh, this is...
Yeah, like, "Hey, we work together. I know you. You want to ride?" And almost immediately after getting in the car, he begins attacking her and screaming at her, and he forces her to drive down an isolated dirt road into a field. Toni's car was found 2 days later after she had gone missing a few miles from the hospital. Her naked body was found almost a month later on February 15th by utility workers. The field was on the corner of West Jensen Road and Highway 281 in Archer County, about 1 mile south of the Wichita County line. She would have actually turned 24 the day before she was discovered. Like Terry, Toni had been sexually assaulted and stabbed multiple times, 8 to be precise. 3 times on her back, 3 on her chest, and 2 defensive wounds on her left forearm and her thumb. Her body was found close to an abandoned school bus where police presumed the murder occurred. Toni's clothing was also found inside the bus. She survived initially, the assault. She survived initially. She'd been stripped of all of her clothing and assaulted, and she still managed to crawl 100 feet before she died. After Farian killed Toni, he abandoned her car, but I feel like he kind of hid it in plain sight because he parked it legally on an intersection less than a mile from his house.
That's not exactly hid.
Right. So as we mentioned, Toni's body was discovered on February 15th, and Farian quit his job at Wichita General Hospital on February 19th. Probably felt like, they're getting close or something.
Mm-hmm.
So 24-year-old Danny Laughlin was initially a suspect in Toni's murder due to the fact that he frequently rode his motorcycle near that area where she was found. They had actually met a few days earlier. They had met at a nightclub. Danny took and failed a lie detector. Now, I know we've talked about taking lie detectors. Like, you want the bad guys to take them and fail, but like, as if you were to ever be put in a situation where you have to take a lie detector, don't take it, because they're not reliable. They're just not.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure that I would end up like admitting to killing JFK or
right, not even born.
Country.
Yeah, you weren't even born, and you're like, yeah, I did it. I'm so sorry. You know?
I'm so sorry. I really like the book depository building.
So not only did he fail the lie detector, he apparently made what police said were suspicious statements. Danny was put on trial for Toni's death, even though his DNA was compared to the DNA at the scene and was not a match. He was tried purely on circumstantial evidence. The jury deliberated for 2 days before deadlocking. Danny was released, and prosecution decided not to retry the case since only one of the 12 jurors believed in his guilt. Toni Gibbs was buried at Clayton Cemetery in New Mexico. In March of 1985, 2 months after the abduction of Toni Gibbs, Farian Wardrop went to Fort Worth, Texas, supposedly to look for a job, because remember, he quit the hospital after Toni was found.
Mm-hmm.
While in Fort Worth, he met 25-year-old Deborah Sue Taylor. It was early on March 24th, and the two encountered each other at a bar where she'd been with her husband, Ken Taylor. But you see, Ken had actually left the bar early because he was tired, and Deborah wasn't ready to leave, so she stayed. So Farian approached the now solo Deborah and asked for a dance, and she agreed. The two danced, and then they spent some time together inside the bar, but all innocent, assuming. Okay, we're not saying that she was doing anything wrong. They just were hanging out inside the bar.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the evening, Farian offers Deborah a ride home, which she accepts. Unfortunately, she had no clue what she was walking into and what kind of a monster she'd been spending time with. So he made advances toward Deborah, which she rejected. She's married. Of course, right. He's an absolute piece of garbage, and this upset him, and he killed her and dumped her body at a construction site in East Fort Worth. Of course, when she didn't return home, her husband Ken reported her missing. Deborah's body was found 5 days later on March 29th, 1985 by some construction workers. Her death was not related to Wardrop at all until years later. Initially, Deborah's husband was, of course, considered to be at fault.
Yeah, because 9 times out of 10.
Right. And that is a fact. It usually is the husband, but in this case, unfortunately for poor Ken, it wasn't. Despite passing not one, but two, or excuse me, not one, not two, but three lie detector tests, the implication of his guilt took a huge toll on his life because his family and Deborah's family all believed that he was responsible for her death. Oof. And they cut him off, completely turned against him.
Oh, man.
Deborah Taylor was buried at Shannon Rose Hill Memorial Park in Fort Worth. Her date of death was marked as March 24th of 1985, the last day she was seen alive. I don't know what ended up happening to Ken after Farian, after it's discovered that he was responsible. I looked and looked and looked and I couldn't find anything. So I'm sure he's rebuilt his life and, he's moved on, but I don't know about like Deborah's family and if they've ever come back together. I'm sure, painfully they have.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Tough to know. It's a long time for.
Yeah. So about 6 months later, on September 20th of 1985, Farian strikes again, this time abducting 21-year-old Ellen Blau back in Wichita Falls. Mm-hmm. Ellen was like minding her own business. She's walking to her car after her waitressing shift. Ellen was also a student at Midwestern University. Farian forced his way into her vehicle and then made her drive to a secluded area, and he strangled her to death. He stated in a Cold Case Files episode that he broke her neck. That episode is season 1, episode 16, titled The Killer in the County. It aired in March of 2001. So after Farian takes poor Ellen's life, he leaves her in a secluded area. Then he takes her car and drives it back to Wichita before abandoning her car and her purse. Ellen's blood was found inside the car. Ellen's body was discovered in a field in Wichita County on October 10th, 1985 by a country road crew member. So we've got the construction workers, we've got road crew members. So it's all like these people. It's like all his bodies are discovered by people doing their jobs.
Right.
How just traumatizing.
And you gotta hope that that's like rare.
Yeah.
Like if you go into that profession, it's not like something like you go into the medical profession, you work in an ER, you're going to see some dead bodies.
Right.
You become a mortician, you're going to see some dead bodies.
Because if not, then I don't think you're doing your job.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think anybody's like, I'm going to become a construction worker so I can pick up some dead bodies.
Yeah. I can't. Ellen's body was severely decomposed when she was discovered due to this fact, it took dental records to identify her body. It's assumed that she was sexually assaulted, but it's hard to know, but they assume this because her underwear was off. But because her body was so severely decomposed, they couldn't accurately test. No semen was found. One of Ellen's friends is reported to have lived in the same building as Farian, and she said that she was extremely uncomfortable around him. But this is, of course, before the knowledge that he killed Ellen. Ellen was buried at Benai Jacob Memorial Park in New Haven, Connecticut. Now, remember, Farian is married. He's still married during these murders.
Wow.
It was, now remember, he had the addiction problems with drugs and alcohol. And he also couldn't keep a job. He was constantly switching jobs or unemployed. So it caused his family to struggle financially. Jonna's parents helped out by paying their rent and buying groceries. But Jonna, like most people, she kind of grew tired of the lack of responsibility and the addictions. And she leaves in December of 1985 and takes the kids with her. And she files for divorce. And it's finalized in October of 1986. So this married man has committed these murders. Not like he's the first married man to commit murders.
Right. But wonder if maybe there were some signs that somebody might have caught.
I don't know. So 8 months after his last murder, Farian struck one more time on May 6th of 1986. His victim was 21-year-old Tina Kimbrough, a waitress. Tina thought she'd made a new friend in Farian. Sadly, Tina was less random than his previous victims. She suffered her unfortunate fate because, well, she reminded him of his ex-wife.
Oof.
Farian went to her apartment and, using her pillow, suffocated her. Tina's neighbors reported seeing a tall white male, about 6'2", with dark hair. He was wearing a baseball cap. Now, do you remember the suspect in the second murder of Tony Gibbs? A guy named Danny Laughlin. We talked about Danny.
Yeah.
Initially, he was a suspect person of interest in this case as well, but he was ruled out quickly due to the neighbor's description. Poor guy.
Yeah.
A suspect in not one but two murders he had nothing to do with.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Tina was buried at Woolburger Memorial Park in Vernon. So 3 days later, on May 9th, Farian calls police. He's in Galveston at the time. And he got around, didn't he?
Yeah.
His call...
Killing people, you gotta put some distance between you, I guess.
Gotta stay on the go. His call to police was to threaten suicide. When police arrived at the location, he confessed to Tina's murder. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison, but was paroled just over a year later, in December of 1997.
Eesh.
Upon his release, he moves to Olney, Texas. Farian, who was officially divorced now, remarries, becomes active in the local community, in his church. I mean, he's like a pillar of the community. He even became a Sunday school teacher, and he got a job at a screen door factory. Okay, so you get a year for self-confessed murder, and then you just get to live your best life?
Evidently. That's some weird guidelines there.
Yeah. So John Little, fortunately, a detective in Wichita Falls, began a cold case investigation of the unsolved murders of Terry Sims, Tony Gibbs, and Ellen Blau in 1999. So there was DNA that was discovered at the scenes of both Terry and Tony, and it was discovered that the DNA was from the same person, even though they didn't know who that person was yet. It was Detective Little's investigation that discovered a previously unknown link between Ellen and Farian. You see, an officer that worked the Tina Kimbrough case told Detective Little at trial Farian admitted to knowing Ellen Blau. It was a lead that was never looked into at the time. Farian himself said if police had, quote, paid a little more attention, they would have found him sooner. So Detective Little's investigation found more evidence that linked Farian to the unsolved murders of Terry, Tony, and Ellen. So you see, Ellen had lived 1 block away from Terry, and Farian worked as an orderly at the same hospital as Tony, where she was a nurse. Initially, police didn't have any of Farian's DNA to compare to the crime samples. So using one of our favorite tricks, Adam, Detective Little got a sample. So after his parole, we mentioned that Farian worked at a screen door factory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Detective Little goes to the screen door factory and he approaches Farian on a break, and he asks if he could use the paper cup that Farian had been drinking his coffee from to spit his dip into. Farian complies. He doesn't know any better. He hands the cup over. Detective Little, very stealthily puts that cup in a sample bag.
Yeah.
And they were able an evidence bag, right. Yeah. And they were able to use the DNA from the cup to compare samples. The DNA was a match to the DNA in Terry and Tony's cases. Farian's arrested, and once in custody, he again confesses to murder. Actually 4 this time.
Good grief.
Terry Sims, Tony Gibbs, Ellen Blau, and Deborah Taylor in Fort Worth, Texas. Farian was sentenced in 1999 to death for the murders of Terry Sims and was given a life sentence for each death. Tony Gibbs, Ellen Blau, and for Deborah Taylor. In 2008, a federal magistrate recommended that Farian's death sentence should be overturned due to ineffective counsel at trial. So on June 4th of 2011, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the initial court ruling that ordered the state of Texas to give Farian a new trial or to change the sentence to life in prison. So it gets sent back to the U.S. District Court for reconsideration. And then in December of 2014, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals dismisses Farian Wardrop's appeal that cited inadequate representation. In April of 2020, the federal court conditionally grants a stay, stopping the death sentence. And they ordered Farian to be released if the state did not start new proceedings for a trial or agree to the life sentence within 180 days. Just shy of the 180-day mark, in September of 2020, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals flipped the federal district court's decision to grant a new punishment trial, and they reinstated the death sentence. Inmate 999331 remains on death row at Polunsky Unit near Livingston, Texas, approximately 5 miles away from Livingston. Polunsky houses Supermax units. That's where he will stay until either he dies or is put to death. Body Hunter was written by Patricia Springer in 2001 and is a true crime book based on Farian Wardrop's crimes. Dark Dreams, a legendary FBI profiler, examines homicide and the criminal mind. That's the full title. Explores.
That's a heck of a title.
I know. He explores and profiles Wardrop's crimes in Chapter 11, which is titled A Serial Killer. Scream at the Sky from 2003 by Carlton Stowers also discusses Farian's crimes and the investigation around them. The title stems from Farian's account of Terry Sims' murder. We mentioned the cold case episode that he was also on. Also in 2001, Discovery Channel's The New Detective Show highlighted the forensic used to catch Farian. It's season 6, episode 8. It's called To Kill Again. And True TV's Forensic Files covered Farian's murders, season 7, episode 22, called Sip of Sins. Get that? Sip, because he was sipping. Sip of Sins. There you go. I can't believe that the name of the book, though, Scream at the Sky, based on Farian's account of Terry's murder. It seems kind of cold-blooded, but
yeah, real cold-blooded. Also, like, they had him at one point.
Yeah,
and they didn't get out on technicality. He got paroled?
Yep. After a year, he admits to killing one person, and they're like, "Oh, you're good. You did some time." What?
Yeah, you did a year. That's cool.
That's plenty. We got other people to worry about. You're kidding me, right?
Yeah. Goodness.
He did less time than somebody who's like smoked a joint.
Yeah, and he confessed. They're like, "Oh well, he said he was sorry."
Bonus points, you confessed. We're gonna let you out early.
I guess. Wow. And how many more lives could have been saved?
Yeah, seriously. And who knows how many more he may have taken and never admitted to.
That's true. He seemed like he was pretty.
Well, you caught me. I'm going to tell you. But he didn't confess to the other ones the first time he was caught, and he'd already committed those.
That's true. He probably, and maybe he didn't remember them all.
That's true too.
Which is kind of messed up, but
yeah. But there you go. That is the story of Farian Wardrop, who is safely and securely locked up and hopefully will remain so. Don't you wish I had gone first so we could we could end off on a positive note?
we talk about some Cowboys and Aliens now. I just do my whole section again.
I can always tell how bad the story has impacted you by how silent you get. The level of silence that you have.
The lack of smart comments start to drop off after time. hasn't said anything sarcastic in like 10 minutes. He must be really down. That is true.
Oh man.
Yeah, sometimes they just stick with me, and it's just like, man,
Yeah.
it's so scary how stuff can happen, and it happens every day.
I know. I mean, literally, and this is a true story. Like just last night, and I think it is because I'm a true crime person, and so like my daughter called me, and I was able to just be like real calm or whatever because she called and she was on her way home from work, and she said she had passed a car, and then she heard this big thud, and then something started dripping on her car, and she calls me and she's like, what do? I was like, you keep driving. You do not stop. You do not pull over. You bring your behind home. I said, and then we can look at it from there. And she's like, well, because I could tell like she hadn't stopped, but I could tell she'd slowed a little more than she needed to. And I was like, you need to keep driving and you need to get out of that area right now. And you need to make sure that they're not following you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like the one where the coworker sees him walking and decides to give him a ride home. Like, you don't think it's going to be somebody you know. I mean,
right. Yeah. Yeah. And just to finish it up so like nobody's worried, she's fine. She made it home. I think it was like a water balloon. Somebody threw like a water balloon. But
still, I mean, who's chucking water balloons and stuff?
I know. And that's why I was like, do not stop, do not slow down, because to me that feels too much like an attempt to get you to stop and to get you out.
Yeah.
And that's the true crime person in me. And it could have been some teenagers just playing around, playing pranks, but nope, that true crime person in me is like, no, they want you to stop so they can steal your car or steal you. And no, you just keep driving.
Just keep going. Not worth it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But, yeah. All right. New you haven't seen the new Dune yet. I was gonna go to the movies last night and I couldn't find a parking spot. It was like the $5 movie night, and I couldn't find a parking spot, so I was very upset because I was trying to choose between Halloween Kills and Last Night in Soho.
I've heard really good things about Last Night in Soho, and I really like Edgar Wright, and you know me in like scare movies, so I was just like not gonna even think about it, but
right.
I don't know.
I know, but that's one of those where it's like, is it really that scary?
Right. It looks like more psychological, but there's gonna be some jump scares.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Like I always got the big thing of popcorn, and then when I get scared on a jump scare, then like everyone has my popcorn.
Plus that one
nobody likes that.
That one has Anya Taylor-Joy. And then
is that the lead actress's name?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Because she was in
Queen's Gambit.
Jojo Rabbit. Which one was in Jojo Rabbit?
Oh, yes. What is her name?
Thomasin McKenzie.
Oh, yes, that's the one from Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, and she's really good. And then the other one is from
Queen's Gambit and Emma, and a couple other things. What, The Witch, Peaky Blinders. She was in Peaky Blinders.
Yeah, and Edgar Wright is really talented. But I think it's probably going to be a watch at home.
Matt Smith is also in that one, and that's a big one for me because he's one of the doctors from Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been watching wasn't there just a brand new series that came out for Doctor Who?
The new season with the female doctor?
Yeah.
I watched her first season. I didn't watch her subsequent seasons. Jodie Whittaker.
Yeah.
I was really excited about her. I don't know. Maybe I should watch her second. I think she did 2 seasons. I mean, 3 total. I should probably watch her subsequent seasons and see if I like them better. I just was like, meh. Like I was really excited about a female doctor, and then it was just kind of meh. But like also the previous showrunner had left the season before, and like several of the writers.
Yeah, so it's a lot of things.
Yeah. But anyway, so those were the movies that I was considering. Of course, Dune on HBO Max. Halloween Kills is on Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have Peacock. Do you have Peacock?
I have Peacock because they have a contract with the Premier League, so I can watch my soccer.
You can watch your football.
Yeah. So I can see Newcastle United break my heart all the time.
Or if you're a Ted Lasso fan, now it's Richmond. Richmond. What's their chant? Richmond.
Oh, Richmond.
I don't know. But anyway.
It's crazy how like the Richmond FC, it's a made up team, but you can they're probably the number one, like the easiest soccer team in the world to get gear up right now. I mean, I saw hilarious. It was easily the number one costume I saw on Halloween weekend was Ted Lasso.
That's great.
We were like at one point at the bar, I've got, probably like 15 stools, and we had at least 2 different Ted Lasso groups.
Wow.
Yeah.
And normally, like, I would hate that Ted Lasso mustache, but you're like, but it's just so Ted.
Yeah. No, people, because I did the Mario thing on Saturday, and then everyone was like, oh, you're going to keep that? Is it a Ted Lasso thing? I'm like, no, I'm shaving everything off tomorrow. But people were like, he's making mustaches cool. There was a guy that came in last night. It's Tuesday. We're not even Halloween anymore. Dude's just rocking a mustache. So maybe mustaches are coming back.
Did you legitimately shave your head?
Oh, yeah. Have I not sent you the picture?
No, I saw your costume. If you have not seen them, you need to check Adam's Instagram. And you were supposed to send them all to me so I could put them on our Instagram, but
I got distracted. I only sent you like one.
You sent me one of the 3 that you did, but you did the Silence of the Lambs, and I was like, I was at work looking at it with someone, and I was like, oh, he shaved his head.
Yeah, it's like full on shaved. Went down the I shaved everything, shaved my head, shaved my beard, so it's the most bareface I've been, and I'll tell you, it's cold.
So it's going to be a no shave November.
Yeah, so I don't plan on shaving again until like June, because the first time, like my chin was completely uncovered for the first time in a very long time, and it was not liking the wind.
Wow.
So yeah, I sent you the composite of the 3 costumes.
Yes.
And then the super creepy, I'm all bald.
You're up close. Very, very Hannibal Lecter-ish up close photo.
Yeah, it's weird. It's just I've never shaved my head like this. So I've gone short, but I've never gone all the way down to
You fully committed to this.
I did. I committed to the bit. So I had the full, like the mustache. What was that?
I was opening Instagram to put your picture on, and something started.
I was like, it sounded like it fit. So I'm sending you here a picture of me with the mustache, where this guy, I wasn't even dressed up as Mario. I was wearing a hat, and he asked me if I was doing a Ted Lasso thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
It was a pretty solid mustache. I was pretty pleased with it.
Yeah, you did good. Done good. You done good. You done good.
Also, I've noticed that now with that no facial hair, I think that I've been really lazy about like putting like my lips around bottles or cans or glasses, because I keep like missing sides. I'm like, have I just been dribbling into my beard for years and I didn't know about it?
It was a safety net.
Yeah, I was like just getting lazy because I had a catch-all. Now I don't have a catch-all. And I'm like, why is this running down my chin? I forgot how to like appropriately eat food.
Oh man.
So I'm relearning how to be a human.
Oh goodness. All right, so I'm going to post those Halloween photos on our Instagram. And speaking of our Instagram, you can always get in touch with us on our Instagram. You can send us messages. Of course, you can tag us in your stories when you're listening. We love that so much. Not only on Instagram, but Twitter and Facebook as well. And you can email us, A-Side, B-Side podcasts with an S at gmail.com. If you've got a story, if you've got a suggestion, if you just want to say, hey, I listened and I did not hear you mention Angelina Jolie in the podcast this week. You can do
Which
all
is
of
false. She is mentioned in every single podcast at least once. Maybe.
You can also head on over to our website, Adam.
A-side, B-side, podcast.square.site. Not sure why I got an accent there, but it's what happened.
A-side, B-side, podcast.square.site. And
good day, mate.
You can support the podcast on there by checking out our sources, checking out our photos. Also, we've got merch on there as well. And we've got YouTube. We've got Buy Me a Coffee, which is buymeacoffee.com/A-side-B-side-pod. And of course, all the money raised with that goes towards promotion, production, and actual coffee.
Yeah, because Brooke needs coffee to edit all of the times that I mispronounce someone's name or use an accent for no apparent reason.
Say Tommy Davidson instead of Pete Davidson.
And Steve Belushi and Robert Ebert.
Robert Ebert. Roger Downey Jr. No,
yeah.
You didn't say that one this week.
I wouldn't shock me. Evidently, in a recent episode, I was talking. A friend of mine sent me a text, and I meant to say emaciated when I talked about Tom Hanks being really skinny for Castaway, and I said emancipated, which is very different.
I can't believe I didn't call you on that.
Well, yeah, I know. We used to, so full disclosure, we used to have, when we did the morning show, we had a whiteboard, where we would write all of the things that I mispronounce on the board. And my favorite one that I still to this day is for one morning, I just could not say Pacific Ocean. I kept saying specific ocean. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which isn't wrong, because it is a specific ocean, but the specific ocean that it is the Pacific Ocean.
But that is not the correct name of that.
That is not the name of the specific ocean. It's the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, man.
I have literally laughed about that out loud probably a dozen times in the last 15 years since that happened. And people just looked at me very weird. Because I'll just be like, Pacific Ocean.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I guess that does it. That's another episode of A-Side, B-Side podcast. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Brooke. We'll talk to you later.